So, basically, if you just think about, just get down to the bottom of Vedanta, right? What is Vedanta saying? So it's just, you can think about Vedanta as simply this: it's the knowledge of Brahman. That is Vedanta. So there is a time when we don't have that knowledge, and that's the case of 99% of this world. We don't understand Brahman. We don't know that there is something called Brahman. So we see life as, just everything around us. This is it. Everything we see distinct and different from each other. We don't see any connection between things. We see ourselves also as one of the things in the world, right? That's how we look at life. And Vedant says that that is not actually how reality is. But we are ignorant of reality, so that is why we think like this. And it has a lot of problems. When we think like this, we are not in step with reality. So we have a lot of issues. We have fear because we think that hum chote se hain and everything else around us is, distinct from us, and it affects us. So the basic thing is that lack of knowledge, ignorance, causes Dvaitha. Dvaitha means having separation, and Dvaitha causes fear. It causes, even the little bit of Dvaita causes fear. That is a big statement from, say, for example, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So Dvaita causes fear, it causes restlessness, it causes angst, things like that. And it misleads us. We don't know where to go for happiness. We want happiness. We go for material things. We get some happiness, we get some unhappiness. We are like basically sort of rudderless because we are, our eyes are closed. In other words, we don't know what reality is. So that is the state, one state. And then Vedanta says, no, you, let's give you knowledge. So once you have knowledge, you realize that there is something called Brahman, which is singular, one thing only, and you are also that Brahman. Your reality is also that Brahman. The reality of everything in the world is Brahman. Whatever you see, observer, observed, consciousness, whatever things that you can think of, any concept you can think of, any material you can think of, any idea you can think of, anything you can think of, its reality is Brahman. That is why it is one. And you can't see that Brahman. You can't feel that Brahman. You can't experience that Brahman. You can only know it. So, so that's that once you have that knowledge, once you have that clear understanding that there is Brahman, then you start seeing things as they are. That's what Vedanta says, right? And once you start seeing things they are as they are, one of the benefits of that is that fear is gone because you know that your reality is forever. It's not going anywhere. And you also realize that, this Brahman is fullness itself. So you don't need to get your fullness or your happiness from other things in the world. Doesn't mean that you don't need those. You shouldn't go out. You should not relate to the world. It doesn't mean that. It just means that you understand that your your happiness is not going to come from those things. It comes from just happiness is your nature because Brahman is happy. Brahman is happiness. Okay. So those are the two things. So that taking you from, you know, an ignorant person who doesn't understand and know Brahman, taking to a person who understands and knows Brahman is the aim of Vedanta. And that is the only aim of Vedanta. And that is it. The difference between a person who studied Vedanta and understood it and not is just this. Which of these two camps do you belong to? Okay.
But I think a just to
Hmm.
interrupt, aim of Vedanta is actually knowing Brahman and knowing self. I think it puts emphasis on both the points. Only knowing Brahman and not knowing your own self doesn't help much.
But Brahman, but you're right. So knowing Brahman as yourself,
Yeah.
right? Because you can't, they're not two different things, Brahman and self. It's not like
They are
there's a
not
Brahman and there's a
two
self.
different things, but knowledge of Brahman, knowledge of self, and then connecting the dots. That's the whole
That's the
exercise.
methodology.
Ah,
But there you can't. it's because this is the way we think, that there is a knowledge of Brahman, and which is something, then there's a knowledge of self, which is something else, and we connect them together. That is just a way of approaching it.
बट
But
अभी तक तो कुछ भी नहीं
Brahman,
पता था ना, मैं सेल्फ भी नहीं पता था, ब्राह्मण भी नहीं पता था, कुछ भी नहीं पता था ना.
but you can't know self without knowing Brahman. You can't know Brahman without knowing self.
हाँ,
They are
या
not two different things. That's what I'm trying to tell you. What
हम्म.
you call self, I'm calling Brahman.
हम्म.
Correct? So knowing ourself is saying exactly the same thing as knowing Brahman.
हम्म.
What you're suggesting, which is go by, in order to investigate this Brahman,
हम्म.
the right way, the way that Vedanta suggests is to investigate yourself.
या.
Correct? That is your way to investigating Brahman, to figuring out Brahman.
हम्म.
Because your own reality is also Brahman. You can take anything,
एनीथिंग.
anything in this world, and say, I want to find its reality. You'll reach Brahman. And Vedanta does both. It takes the world and says, what is its reality? All that thing we did about, uh, the substance and form, substance and form, substance and form, right? So what is the substance? So you take a rock, its reality is Brahman. You take me, the reality is Brahman. You take Mukta, reality is Brahman. Anything you can go, you can say, but it's not possible for us to investigate a rock. We get stuck. But we have more sort of means to investigate ourselves. So we say, okay, we investigate ourselves. I want to know what myself is. What am I exactly? Because there's a lot of interest in that too. Because, we are, as human beings, we want to know ourselves. So it's much easier. We have much more motivation to investigate ourselves. But at the end of the day, the knowledge of Brahman meaning that this Brahman is me also, it's everything. That knowledge is Vedanta. Right, Sanjay?
राइट. या.
It's the same thing, but yeah, where we how you go about it is that is where we go to the self. So these are the two camps, right? You got either you know it or you don't know it. But there are shades within each. So for example, in the group of people, let's say when we don't know Brahman, we have no idea about Brahman, there are still variations. There are people who are, for whom there is the question of Brahman doesn't arise. They are convinced that their goal in life is to get more success, whichever way they define it, either through money or through power or through a combination of the two or through influence, whatever you want to say. There are people like that. They have no truck for anything, like whatever there is. I don't believe in anything else. I'm not interested in anything else. I'm not interested in learning about Brahman or God or anything else. That is one group of people. And there are a lot and lot of them you can see. Especially, I mean, quite a few. But then over time, what you find is that in the high, say one level higher than that, if you want to call it that, is a group of people who are still interested in all those things only, but they are beginning to get aware that there is something more than what meets the eye. Now they can say, okay, there may be Ishwar is what is there, maybe God is there, and something is happening. They understand I don't have full control over things. Maybe, I should pray to God. That might help me because initially I used to think I'll do everything, I'll manage everything, I'll control everything. Now I know I can't. And I still want those things. And they might even get interested in religion. They might even get interested in the Vedas, right? And Vedas, the initial part of the Vedas, which is um, the Purva, the Karam Kand, talks to these people, and it says, okay, you want wealth, here's what you need to do to get wealth. You do this yagna or whatever, and you need power, here's what you do to do power. You want victory, this is what you do. You want children, this is what you do. Things like that. You want your ancestors to be happy in their afterlife, this is what you do. And it reaches its limit by saying, when it tells you that there is actually more than just this world. There is Swarg and Narak. So you want Swarg in your future life, do this. You want Narak in your future life, do this. But all this is, the basic idea is that there is a me, different from everything else. I'm having experiences, happy and sad. I want to maximize my happy experiences and reduce my sad experiences. And some people just go for today, immediate gratification. Some people are saying, okay, I understand that there is more to it. And maybe there is another life, maybe there are all these things. So I want to start now investigating what that is, and I want to think about God and pray to God and all of those things. So what you're doing is actually you're moving from a situation of slightly, very low antakarna shuddhi, a person who's full of desires, to a person who is, a little bit more enlightened, is able to think, okay, there may be something beyond me, something beyond what meets the eye, correct? And but they're all in the same bucket. They have no idea, or if they have, they've heard of Brahman because they may have read the Ved, but they don't care about it. It's not what is motivating them. Okay. Hello, Rajiv.
Yeah. Hi, Dheeraj.
Okay, I just want to know it's you. All right. Hi. We were
Hi.
just talking about we were talking about what just generally about Vedanta. We were saying
Right.
that Vedanta is this knowledge about Brahman or knowledge about self and Brahman being the same is what basically Vedanta gives. And there are a lot of people who don't have that knowledge, and giving them that knowledge is Vedanta's main purpose. That is what Vedanta is really all about, to give them this knowledge that the world as they see it is not right. The world,
Yeah.
as there is something called Brahman, it exists, you just don't see it. So within this group, this gradation is there. And likewise, in the other group, which actually knows Brahman, correct, which understands Vedanta, there's also gradation. Because there are people who understand it, have glimmers of it, they get some idea about it. That's how it starts. And if you continue down the path, you will at some stage, at some time, get conviction. And that's once that happens, then you can throw Vedanta away. Then you're done. Correct? So that's the gradation on the other side. So what is Antakarna Shuddhi? Right? And why what role does this play in it? Because Vedanta doesn't say that I want to give you Antakarna Shuddhi. Vedanta says I want to give you knowledge of Brahman. And what you need is knowledge of Brahman. In a way, this was also the question that Arjun had to um, to Bhagwan Krishna, because he told Krishna Bhagwan, why are you asking me to fight? Why can't I just go become a sannyasi? Because you're telling me the Gita starts by saying you are Brahman, and this is what you need to know. So he said, why don't I just focus on that? I should all I'm interested in is knowing that I am Brahman. So I want to be a sannyasi and focus on it. And Krishna Bhagwan then explains to him why he needs to fight. What he's telling him really is that he needs more Antakarna Shuddhi before he can get knowledge. So what is Antakarna Shuddhi? So Antakarna Shuddhi is not something which is a Vedanta speciality. I think Mukta is trying to get back in. Okay, Mukta, there are two of you now. I think recording. Okay. So Antakarna Shuddhi is not a Vedanta specialty. You can strive for Antakarna Shuddhi with having no idea about Brahman at all. And a lot of people in this world do exactly that. A lot of the monks, a lot of people who are interested in, sort of ascetic lifestyle, who have, who want to control their desires or who have a better control on their desires, they all have very high degree of antakarna shuddhi. In fact, Swamiji says that there are people who are saints, right? Literally sant आदमी होते हैं, but they don't know anything about Brahman. So you can, and they are happy, with their in their quest, in what they're trying to do. There are yogis, right? Now, the only difference is what Vedant says is that however much antakarna shuddhi you might have, you're not going to conquer fear. Somewhere deep down in you, there will be some fear because you will always be seeing yourself as separate from others. So, but on the other hand, people who have high antakarna shuddhi are what's called uttam adhikaris. They are people who will just like that. Once knowledge is given to them, they will get the idea just like that. It'll take them very little time to get conviction. So their path from first introduction to conviction is very, very quick. And that's what they say happened, for example, to, just as an example, the example that they give here is Ramana Maharishi, right? He was an extreme example of this. So that's how Antakarna Shuddhi comes in. So if within the group of people who have said, let's say, be introduced to Vedanta, the Antakarna Shuddhi level varies, and correspondingly the Adhikaritvam varies, how much Adhikari you are. So Adhikari means how qualified you are to learn or understand Vedanta. So you can be someone in Camp A, right? We talked about the big group of people who are just concerned about living their life right now and have no interest in self-knowledge. They are not adhikaris. They are not qualified. And traditionally, Vedanta will not go out to them. They might have heard, because in the past also, all these people, during their childhood, they used to read the Vedas. Everybody was used to read the Vedas. But reading and understanding are two very different things, or even having an interest is very different. So Vedas will have a lot of things, but they will get drawn towards the initial part of the Vedas, which talks about how to acquire wealth, what kind of yagnas to do this, and so on and so forth. So they will be more attracted to that. They have heard about Vedanta, it's somewhere in the back of their mind, I mean, it's gone. But when you are an adhikari, that means once you're qualified enough, then suddenly you will start finding yourself more interested in the latter part of the Vedas. You'll be more interested in Vedanta. And what is the biggest qualifier? The biggest qualifier is life. Having gone through life, having gone through experiences, and then come to the conclusion that, yeah, I I'm not making any progress really in terms of my happiness. And I think I'm making progress, then I get jolted and I go right back, things like that. I think I'm getting happier, having more money, but I'm not really. For a while I'm happy and then I'm back to more desires. So this is the biggest um, qualifier. But having got this qualification, now you're seeking self-knowledge. Now you're moving towards the Vedanta camp. But within the qualified people, Vedanta says there are three kinds. Okay, I'm just giving you. So there's the Manda Adhikari, which is the lowest level, the Madhyam Adhikari, which is the middle level, and the Uttam Adhikari. And the difference between the Manda, Madhyam, and Uttam is Antakarna Shuddhi, the level of Antakarna Shuddhi. So if you've come to Vedanta with only your life as the qualifier, meaning you just kind of lived through life and said, um, I've come to the conclusion that the path I'm on is not enough for me. I'm getting older. I am going to die one day. Uh, I have to start thinking now of what happens after I die. Or, I'm coming to realize that all this while I've been accumulating wealth, going after money, doing this, relationships, and all that. And it hasn't really, really worked for me in terms of my happiness. Yeah, I'm richer than before, but I'm still as dissatisfied, if not more, than before. Maybe I was happier as a child when I didn't have all this. So these kinds of questions start plaguing you. And then you say, okay, I'm going to go to Vedanta. Now, that is typically going to be a Manda Adhikari. But you're an Adhikari, absolutely. It's qualified, but Manda Adhikari. Because you've not done work on your mind, right? You know that the life I've been leading, the way I've been going is not okay enough. I need something more. But you don't, nothing beyond that. On the other hand, you could have an Uttam Adhikari. An Uttam Adhikari would be a person who has lived that life and then decided to uh, to do other things to his life, who's lived an ascetic life, who has lived a pure life, who is dharmic, who kind of realized, what is more important for me is looking at the bigger picture, service, karam yogi, on all these things. There are people who've done a lot of that. They've investigated their mind. They said, let me understand why, what is my motivation, what's driving me to do these things. You don't need Vedanta for that. You can you can jolly well do that without Vedanta. But if you've done that, you moved up sort of on the scale of Antakarna Shuddhi. Then when you come to Vedanta, you could be a Uttam Adhikari. Then the knowledge comes and right away you get it. Or you're a Manda Adhikari and you're working on yourself. You're working on Antakarna Shuddhi. You're going up the ladder from Manda to Madhyam, Madhyam to Uttam Adhikari. That's what you're doing. And then suddenly you say, okay, now I get it. I'm done. So, so that is how Antakarna Shuddhi plays a part. So Gita is for all of us. Gita is for anybody who's an adhikari, from a Manda adhikari to a Uttam adhikari. So what would a Manda adhikari be thinking? Manda adhikari has his life in two boats, or her life in two boats. On the one hand, the Manda adhikari knows there is more to life than just going after wealth. That is what attracts the person to Gita in the first place. I think there's more. I want to understand what's more. They have no idea what the Gita message is. They don't know that the message of Gita is know yourself. But they think Gita is going to give them something, some spiritual knowledge. So they're looking for some spiritual knowledge. But at the same time, they are very interested also. They're still, the habits of the old are still there. They're still interested in all kinds of material things. So Gita gives you that too. Gita tells you about that too. So that's how Gita progresses. So Gita says we most of us are Manda Adhikaris. We need more knowledge and we need more Antakarna Shuddhi. So let's go for both. And and these are the two wings of Gita. A typical Upanishad, the typical traditional way, the traditional way of teaching is to say, first we want to move you up on the Antakarna Shuddhi scale. Everything you do in the Karam Kand gradually moves you up the scale. So from a Grihast to a Vanaprasth, right? You're doing meditations, they're teaching you all these things. And in the end, then they say, okay, now let's talk to you let's focus on the self-knowledge. So there's slight differences, but it doesn't really matter. The idea is that you need both, right? What Vedanta also says, Brahma Sutra says this, is that typically a Manda Adhikari would be very attracted towards what we would call the Dvaitha Vedanta. Because for them, for a Manda Adhikari, they just know, they have an idea that okay, I'm Brahman, but that is not real for them. This life is still real for them. So for them to have an Ishwar that they can count on, that they can relate to, that they can kind of, say, okay, Ishwar will take care of things. Ishwar will help me, is very important. So the Dvaita Vedanta works very well for Manda Adhikaris. And then for the Madhyam Adhikaris, it's Vishisht Advait, which means that The Vishishta Dvaita is somewhere in the middle. It talks about um, uh, Ishwar, this whole creation being Ishwar and I being a part of Ishwar. Dvaita is I'm different, Ishwar is different. Vishishta Dvaita focuses on the Vyavaharika. Vishishta Dvaita is the same as the Vyavaharika lens of Advaita. So we'll talk about that next because I wanted to cover that too. So that's Madhyam Adhikaris, and Advaita is typically uh, Uttam Adhikaris. It's most appealing there. So there's nothing you don't have to think about Dvait, Vishishta Dvait, and Advait as contradictory things. That's not how, at least the parampara that I've been taught, or what I'm teaching you, thinks about it. You do all three. You do whatever works for you right now. I mean, for me, thinking about Ishwar and praying to God is a very helpful thing. So, so why not? It doesn't mean that there is whatever whichever you're so recognize yourself, recognize what your stage of life is, what your state of mind is. Don't force an idea into your mind which your mind is not ready for. So knowledge is one thing, and pushing it is another. So if you're happier, if emotionally you need a Bhagwan, then have the Bhagwan, right? This is just to trying to say that don't have to say, okay, that is a Dvait thing, so I'm not interested in that Dvait. That doesn't work for me, or this works for me, or whatever. It's all the same. It's all Vedanta, and it's all gradations of Vedanta. If there was no Dvait, there would hardly be anybody. There's no introduction to Vedanta. Very few people will be interested in Vedanta, because Dvait is the one that gives you the initial sort of toehold into Vedanta. Okay. Did you get that, Sanjay?
Yes, Dheeraj, fine.
Okay. Any question, Mukta, Rajiv, Kiki? Okay, this is nothing. I just wanted to clarify this because it's important to not be confused with these different philosophies. Correct? Then another thing was Paramarthika and Vyavaharika. Because, like, for example, Atul has often said, he said, oh, there's a Parimarthika view, the Parimarthika reality, and there's a Vyavaharika reality. There's only one reality. There is no separate realities, but there are different viewpoints. So now imagine, well, you don't have to imagine. We are individuals, right? We are living in this world, and we are transacting in this world. Now we have knowledge about Brahman. Let's assume we are Gyanis. We have conviction in Brahman, correct? As opposed to another person, like we said, Camp A, no understanding, no knowledge of Brahman. What would be different for us? How do we see reality? What do we see? How do we transact in the world? Nothing is really different in terms of actual transactions in the world. Well, nothing is different, everything is different. You can you can say that. We are we will also see this world full of people and things. I am one of those things. We are interacting with those things. In my life also there is Ishwar. Maybe that Ishwar is not a separate individual, separate from me. Maybe that Ishwar is this system, this whole system. That is Ishwar. And this body and mind, this me, is part of that system. And I understand that. And that is how my Karam Yoga works. Because I understand that the thing that is producing these results is the system as a whole. I am one component of the system. So I can initiate things and I can influence things, but The whole system needs to work together to produce the results of whatever I do. I cannot work in isolation. Nothing I do is in isolation, right? So, I mean, even for example, I decide to learn something. I could be gone tomorrow. I have no control over it. Where would I learn from? Where's the result coming then? The effort has been done and I'm dead, so what is the result? So we have really very little control on the system. So this system exists, I'm part of it. I know that now, right? I also know that my reality is Brahman. And I know that Ishwar's reality is also Brahman. The system's reality is also Brahman. I know that. So that will make a difference to how I feel about myself and to how I feel about things. But this viewpoint that I have, that there is a system and I'm part of the system, and all of these people exist and I have to work with them, is exactly equal to the Vyavaharika. It's exactly equal to Vishisht Advaita. Exactly that. Vishisht Advaita, what Vishisht Advaita says is the Vyavaharika vision of Advaita Vedanta. It's exactly the same. Well, I mean, roughly the same. There could be some minor differences, but this is basically what it is. So from a from my person as an individual, all these things are real and very much existent. The world around me is very much existent. I will have to live in this world. I can I can kind of tell myself, oh no, this doesn't exist, this is Maya. But I mean, that's like a ridiculous uh, sort of assertion. Even you yourself will never be able to have any conviction really in it. कल को कुछ थोड़ी सी दर्द हो जाएगी, you will forget all about this and you will only be worried about the pain. So to say that this is all Maya, that is just confusion. Let's just accept the reality that we are in this world and this world affects us. At this moment, this is what I am, this body, mind, and me. So that is Vyavaharika vision. Do I see Brahman? I don't see. So the difference between a Jnani and a person who doesn't know is that the Jnani knows that there is a Brahman. The Jnani doesn't experience the Brahman, he knows there's a Brahman. He experiences exactly what the rest of the world experiences. What the Jnani does not experience is fear and the restlessness and everything else which comes along with that fear. So the Jnani doesn't experience that. The Jnani has a better understanding, or he's more attuned to this world. He's a better fit with this world. He doesn't feel like a misfit in the world. Whereas the person who's not a knowledgeable person, from time to time, will feel like a misfit in this world, especially when the world deals with us a harsh blow. When something bad happens, and we feel, oh, you know what, we have self pity. We'll say, oh no, this I'm not suitable for this world, or whatever stories we cook up for ourselves. So that is the Vyavaharika vision. That is the Vyavaharika drishti of the same reality. That means the drishti from the perspective of me as an individual, from me as a human being, as a jiva. But I have knowledge of Brahman. So I can say, using that knowledge, I'll say, let me contemplate. Now I'm not living that, no, I'm contemplating. In order for me to understand the knowledge even better, let me see if I move move my perspective from the perspective of this Dheeraj to the perspective of Brahman. Because that is also me, that is my reality. If I was to look at life from a perspective of Brahman, what would that look like? What would that mean? That is called the Paramarthika vision of Vedanta. And you'll see a lot of the Upanishads, especially Mandukya and all, they discuss that. They force us to take that standpoint, to look at the world from a Paramarthika vision so that we can understand Brahman better. If you look at things from two different angles, you'll understand the thing better. They're not two different things, you're just looking at it from two different angles. Gita makes you look at it from multiple angles so that you can understand that thing better. यहाँ से कुछ दिखता है, यहाँ से कुछ दिखता है, यहाँ से कुछ और दिखता है, वहां से कुछ और दिखता है. So then you have a mental picture of the whole thing, a better picture in your mind, right? That's why we have two eyes, because we see slightly different things, so we can get perspective. So that is the Paramarthika. That is what's called the Paramarthika vision. That means, if from that vision when you see from that vision, what you'll find is that the world is a form. That really there is nothing. Everything is Brahman. There's nothing but Brahman itself. Um, you know, the world is mithya. You can say the world is false if you want to call it that, per that Swami Sarvapriyananda lecture or video. Or you can say that the world is mithya or whatever, or the world is a form. The substance is only me, the substance is only this Paramarthika Satyam. And, that is forever, that is not going to go anywhere. But do you feel it? I mean, as a human being, as a jiva, do you feel it? You know it, but you can't feel it. So, so at the end of the day, we are living as jivas, but we are jivas with knowledge. That knowledge can give us the ability to understand a paramarthika vision. And that makes, so to understand the reality, which we cannot as jivas cannot see. It's not available for us to see, to hear, to even think, you know. At best, we can think about it and try to encapsulate it or try to kind of visualize it as a paramarthik, as Brahman. But what happens is that as a jiva, when you understand that and you actually see that there is no reason for fear, then little by little you start acting like that there is no reason for fear. Little by little, you will be less affected by pain. You'll be less affected by, um, um, anxiety. You'll see that happening. That and that is, by the way, called karma yoga. When you say, okay, I'm going to start doing things now without expectation for results because results don't matter. Really, results. I mean, at the end of the day, for my deep happiness, results don't matter. Yes, they matter for the world. So I'm. It's not that I'm not going to act for results. I'm not going to act for seeking happiness. I'm going to act because that's the right thing to do. So as you start doing that and you start seeing, oh, it's working, it actually works, then you get conviction. Then you get conviction in this new way of looking at things. And that's what is called Jnani, the person who has that conviction. So Karam Yoga is not just to prepare the mind, it's also to get conviction for the knowledge which you have somewhere in your head. It makes it very, the benefits of that, it makes it very real for you in real life. So I don't know, I think I got a little, I was going right and then suddenly I realized I've kind of veered off track. Did you guys understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would hate for us to be kind of getting into these sort of discussions कि दुनिया तो मिथ्या है, दुनिया तो false है, दुनिया तो useless है, मैं तो ब्रह्मन हूँ, मैं ये individual नहीं हूँ. That's not the purpose of Vedanta. Okay? Because you'll hear a lot of it about, as they say in Pink Floyd. There's a lot of it about.
Hey, Dheeraj, I have a clarification question.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm done. This is all I wanted to say, and then
Okay.
we can open it up to Q&A now.
So, just making sure I understand this Paramarthika and Vyavaharika stuff. It seems to me that the role of the individual and it being Brahman is sort of common understanding between the two. The thing that appears to be
What to say that again?
between, the role of yourself, and you are Brahman. That
Right.
understanding is sort of common between the two models.
Which models?
Paramarthika and Vyavaharika.
No, they're not two models. They're one model.
Okay.
It's two viewpoints for the same
Two
model.
viewpoints.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Fine.
Two ways of
What I'm
looking
saying.
at the same
Okay.
reality. So you're looking
Yeah.
at it
You're looking at the
from
same
the human
reality.
being, and you're looking at it from the perspective of Brahman.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, the thing about, I myself am Brahman, sort of is the same. It's really how you see the world as is different, right? Is that?
Well, you can see you don't really. I mean, you can say that you can see the world is different, but you don't really see any different. You know that the world is different.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You know,
Yeah,
your
okay.
knowledge, has reached a point, right, where
You're aware, you're basically always aware that there is something called Brahman,
yeah,
which is me,
me,
what's
yeah,
me,
hmm
which is the substance of everything I see. You're aware of
correct, correct.
that, right? But it doesn't mean that you won't feel pain or you won't have experiences which are up and down. That nothing of that will change. But what might change is that you may not be afraid of bad experiences anymore, right? That may change.
No,
Oh,
what I was saying is in the Paramarthika view, I thought the change. So the Brahman part, I understand. Everybody is Brahman, and I am Brahman, right? But um, the world being real, is that's where I see a slight difference between the two viewpoints,
say
right?
that again. World being revealed.
Real, right? I
Real.
mean, yeah. Paramarthika view states that, everything is an appearance in Brahman, right?
Right.
Whereas Vivarika is everybody is Brahman, and that's your
Correct.
Brahman,
Correct. No, no,
yeah,
you're right. So
yeah,
so what you're saying is that as an individual, everything is real to me. Everything around me
yeah,
is real, right? When
yeah,
I look at it. And that's why real is a very it's a very tricky word
yeah,
because even false is a very tricky word. So what do we mean by real? How do we define real? If I say that I'm seeing these things in front of me, I'm seeing you, I'm seeing this computer, is it not really there? It is there. That's why I'm seeing it, right? It is there. It is real. I can feel it. If I if if I've got a hot cup of coffee next to me, if it falls on me, I will feel the pain. Very real pain. So it is very real, right?
yeah,
It's not real. But the way that Vedanta defines it is it is mithya. Mithya is real. Mithya is not unreal. It's a technical term called mithya. It just means that mithya is something which, from the perspective of Satyam, is an appearance. In other words, uh, I mean, how can I say it? It's not real in the sense that if you say why is it not real? Because it'll come and go.
mhm.
Because its reality is not clay. This cup, its reality is not clay.
It's
Its
a
reality,
superimposition, right? It's a superimposition, right? So that's
it's a superimposition.
yeah,
Yes, you can say, but then the problem with those words, which is very true, you'll find that in Vedantic literature, again, is that you'll start thinking, oh, there is nothing very really here. It's just superimposed. It's just like a dream, where in the dream you can say dream is superimposed in my mind.
yeah,
Correct? That's very clear. But we can't really say that for me, this world is superimposed. It's not really there. We can't say that because when I'm looking back at the dream, when I'm in the dream, I can't say the dream is superimposed. When I get
yeah.
up,
Then you can say,
I am more real than the dream, so I can say the dream is superimposed. So from the waker's viewpoint, the waker's viewpoint for the dream is the paramarthika viewpoint of a dream. So imagine that the dreaming you, when you are in a dream, what you are feeling is the Vyavaharika perspective of the dream, correct? When you wake up, you are now saying, oh, dream is just a form. It came and went. You know, nothing happened to me. It was just a manifestation in me. It was just an appearance in me, right? You can say that. But you can say that because you are at a higher level of reality. You're a waker, not a dreamer. That's why you can say that. Now, what you're trying to say is, as a waker, you're trying to say that the world is superimposed. No, it's not as a waker. Your situation right now is just as if you were actually in the dream as a dreamer. So as a waker, the world is very real. It's as real as the waker. That's what real means. But from the perspective of Brahman, which is an awake, like an awake me. If this was a dream, then Brahman is an awake me. From that perspective, you can say that, yeah, the world is superimposed. So when we say the world is superimposed, the world is mithya, the world is all these things, we are taking a paramarthika perspective. Correct? Then only we can say. But I, as a human being, can't say that. I mean, I can think that. I can I can say, okay, I have knowledge about it. But it's not. That's a very different perspective. So to say whether the world is real or not depends on what perspective you're looking at. If you're looking at it from the waker's perspective, the world is totally real. If you're looking at it from Brahman's paramarthika perspective, the world is superimposed. That's what you need to understand, right? So from the waker's perspective, a Vishishta Dvaitha is totally fine. That's how we look, because Vishishta Dvaitha says that Ishwar is real, I'm also real, I'm part of Ishwar, we are all real. That's exactly my perspective as a waker. But the only difference is I know that there is a perspective of Brahman's perspective. I know that. And I know that that from that perspective, this world is superimposition.
Yeah.
You
Well,
tell this to a person who doesn't know this, who doesn't
here
know
is-
the Brahman's perspective, he will say you're going crazy, you're nuts. Right?
But here is my line of thinking, right? Which is if you can convince your own self and build conviction that you are Brahman, and your body and mind is a superimposition of that, right? On that, right? I think if you can convince yourself that, then how is it any different than convincing yourself that all objects that you see, whether they're jivas or whether they are non-living objects, right, are the same transaction, right? I mean, it's the same thing, right? Is what you see is shape and form, right? But truly, they're Brahman, right? So to me, the distance between, if I can, convince myself that, the body mind is a superimposition of Brahman, and I have built conviction in that. To deduce that for everything else around in the world is actually easier, right? Because I don't have
the
to.
body mind is part of the world.
Yeah, I understand, right? But to me, that reduces the complexity, because then it's a moot point, right? I think the only thing that's left to kind of close the gap on is that you are an appearance, and the world is an appearance in the same Brahman as you, right? I think that's a
But
different concept.
but think about it like this. If everything is Brahman, right?
Yeah.
And Brahman is unchanging.
Yeah. Then
Correct?
I think
What else can you
else is
conclude?
okay.
There's nothing else
Got
to
it.
conclude.
Yeah.
You have to conclude that from the standpoint of Brahman, it's an appearance. If it's not an appearance, if Brahman actually modified
Yeah.
and changed to become you, then Brahman is not unchanging.
Right.
Right? Then Brahman is not non-dual. Brahman is dual because it has become you, you're dual. So if that is the case, then your premise is gone that Brahman is unchanging reality. So the only thing you're left with is to say, okay, Brahman is there, fully unchanged reality, and I also seem to be there. So you'll say, okay, I'm an appearance. That's what it means to look at things from a Brahman perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Paramarthika perspective.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that Vedanta is not saying that with that knowledge now, you just do anything you want, like you're in a video game, go die if you want to, go kill yourself just for the heck of it. Right? That is not what Vedanta is saying. It's just saying that you understand that there are different forms. But it's also a fact that to this form, to all us forms, whatever is the power who has put this together, it has given a survival instinct. And let's recognize that too. So we do love to survive. We want to survive. So that's there as well.
Well, awareness is a very common bond. I mean, you look at every creature, well, at least every sentient being, right,
They want survival.
the awareness is a common thing.
Right.
I mean, we went through all this exercise about the five elements and all that, and to me that's a convincing argument that okay, for non-living things, there are shapes and forms, but the underlying substance is Brahman. It just lacks awareness.
I mean, this is you can understand all this logically. You can understand this reasoning wise, right?
Mhm.
And it can make complete sense. And that's what Vedanta is asking you to do right now, is to understand, okay, that because because we can come to a conclusion which says anything that has a form cannot be a substance, because any form can be broken into other more forms, howsoever small. So the substance has to be formless. Once you say the substance has to be formless, it you cannot be formless unless you're non-dual, unless you're dimensionless. Formless means dimensionless. So to be dimensionless, it means you have to be non-dual, because there is no dimension. You can't be two of you. Anyway, the substance can't be two. So if the substance is non-dual and the substance can't change, yet I'm seeing these forms which are changing all the time, and I can see these forms. What else can I conclude? I cannot conclude if I know that the substance can't change and I see that the form is changing, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
The cause can't change, the effect is changing. Then the only conclusion is that the effect has to be an appearance. That's the only way in which an effect will change and the cause will not change. So that is how Vedanta has given you. Now, what you have to do is, having understood this logically, or not even if you don't understand it logically, you can understand it experientially. Not exactly, you can't understand this exactly experientially, but you can understand through experience that when I focus on results, when I focus on actions, right, without worrying so much about how this result is going to make me happy or not, I can be very happy. I'm actually happier. That is the only way to get experiential conviction about Advaita Vedanta. Other than that, it's all in the mind only. And only people who are like, like some of us who love to do mental gymnastics will be attracted towards it. Anyway, sorry, Mukta, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's so late also for you guys. And at 10:30, talking like this is probably very taxing.
Very taxing.
Yeah. So let's forget this now.
Well,
Anything?
can I, before we forget it, can I just say, can I think of it, the Paramarthika and Vyavharika? Can we think of, so in a very simplified model in my mind, I think of, Brahman, screen of Maya, and the world, everything. So if you look from one side of the screen, it's Vyavharika, on the other side of the screen, it's Brahman. And we are, so far is that, like, it's a
It's okay, Kiki. I mean,
simplified.
really, it doesn't matter. It's
But okay, what
whatever
matters?
works for you is the
Okay,
model you go
okay.
for.
The pertinent question I wanted to ask
Yeah.
is that we say that, like when you've said a couple of times, you can have knowledge of Brahman, but you can't experience Brahman, right? So knowledge is one thing, but along with that is contemplation and, like samadhi. Does that give more credence, like an experience like that, which is also a passing experience, whether it's nirvikalp or savikalp samadhi, does that provide, just along with knowledge, does that help give one's mind more conviction in the knowledge?
I mean, honestly, I would say if you think that that's what is required for conviction, or that's what will give conviction, then do it. Like whatever works for you, whatever you think you need to do, you do. So at this moment, if you think, I'm not getting conviction, I think meditation might help me, right? Then do that alongside. Do whatever is needed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it
Along.
depends.
Yeah.
Everybody is different.
No, you laid out all this construct of how things are. So I just meant like traditionally is where does samadhi sit in that entire landscape?
Or everything other than the knowledge of Brahman, everything else sits in the Antakarna Shuddhi landscape. Everything else you do is for Antakarna Shuddhi. The only thing is knowledge of Brahman, which is not Antakarna Shuddhi,
Yeah.
which may be assisted by Antakarna Shuddhi, but it's not there. It's not Antakarna Shuddhi.
There's a very interesting 15-minute lecture that from Sir Priyananda, I listened to about what do you need to do to increase conviction about Brahman. And I think he talks about meditation there, right? Patanjali and, the eight-legged, meditations. And he calls that, I think he differentiates between what you can do while you're awake versus what you can do while you're meditating with eyes shut and eyes open. And I think it was pretty interesting that even eyes open part, is also quite effective. So I can share that link. I
Yeah.
actually spent some time on that last week. I found that to be very, very interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. The meditation that I do, which is outside of Vedanta, which is that, that waking up app with Sam Harris, that is just eyes open, eyes closed, doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It's
Well,
just,
you should send us a link, what app you're talking about. I'm gonna,
oh, sure.
yeah,
I will,
please.
but I just hesitate to do it because it's like outside of Vedanta.
I see.
It's just non-duality, but more sort of in Buddhism.
Mhm.
I don't want to
Okay.
muddy up stuff. But,
Doesn't matter. I mean, what difference does it make?
confusion. It causes more confusion
No,
potentially.
it'll be okay.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, the reason it works for me
should we
is
let you guys
because,
go? The Indian guys go? Because
yeah, yeah.
we're so tired, yeah. So we won't. So I'll let you know when we have our next session. Let me just shut this thing down, I think.